My hard work and intelligence would pay off one day. Oh yes, one glorious day, I would finally prove that I was worth something too. When I started high school, a fire ignited within me. I focused on my studies more intensely than ever before. I yearned to excel, to achieve so spectacularly that even my own parents couldn't possibly ignore my accomplishments. But alas, no matter how fiercely I applied myself, I simply couldn't compete with Brittany's dazzling popularity. It was like she had a spotlight permanently fixed on her. Then in my junior year, a flicker of hope, I won the state math competition. It was an intense intellectual battlefield, a grueling contest where the sharpest minds clashed in a test of pure numbers and cold logic. When they announced my name as the victor, a wave of pride and a surge of hopeful anticipation washed over me. Finally, I had done something truly extraordinary. That very day, I practically flew home clutching my trophy, my heart pounding with excitement to share my triumph. But as I stepped through the door, the familiar gut-wrenching scene unfolded before me. My parents were as always fawning over Brittany, who was twirling in a ridiculous new costume. "Mom, Dad, guess what?" I blurted out, breathless with elation. "I won the state math competition." My mom glanced up fleetingly, offering a perfunctory little smile. "Oh, that's nice, dear Brittany, honey. Turn around so we can see the back." My dad didn't even bother to lift his gaze as he meticulously adjusted Brittany's sequined shoulder strap. "Good job, Jessica. Brittany, are you sure this fits? It looks a little snug on the shoulders." I stood there, the weight of the gleaming trophy in my hands, suddenly feeling like a lead weight in my stomach. "But it's the state competition," I managed to say softly. "I beat hundreds of other students and other." "That's great, sweetie," my mom said distractedly, her attention already fully back on Brittany. "Brittany has a big performance this weekend, and we need to make sure everything is absolutely perfect." And just like that, my hard-won victory, my moment of shining achievement, was swallowed whole, utterly forgotten. I retreated to my room, the trophy, a cold comfort in my hand. I placed it on my desk, a silent testament to my efforts. Noticed by no one but me, there it sat, slowly gathering dust. When the time for college applications finally rolled around, I poured every ounce of my being into them. Each essay, every form was a testament to my burning determination. I was going to get into the best school possible, a place where my intellect would be valued, where I would finally prove once and for all that I mattered. Then the day arrived, the day the acceptance letters were delivered. My breath hitched as I saw the thick envelope from my dream university. With trembling hands, I tore it open. I had been accepted, and not just accepted, but with a full scholarship to study financial analysis. Tears of pure joy and immense relief streamed down my face. I raced to the living room where my parents were sitting with Brittany. "I got in," I exclaimed, my voice shaking with emotion. A full scholarship to study financial analysis at... Before I could even finish the name of the university, Brittany suddenly shrieked, "Oh my God, I completely forgot I need a new costume for my performance next week." Just like that, the spotlight shifted. The focus veered sharply away from my monumental achievement. My parents instantly grabbed their keys and wallets, their faces etched with concern, as they rushed to cater to Brittany's latest theatrical emergency. I stood there, the acceptance letter clutched in my hand, the weight of the moment heavy in the sudden silence. Once again, I was relegated to the background, a mere extra. In the ongoing drama of Brittany's life, I stood in the now empty living room, the acceptance letter a stark white flag of my unrecognized triumph, listening to the fading sound of the car pulling out of the driveway. My parents didn't return until late that night, their arms laden with bags overflowing with Brittany's new costume and an array of glittering accessories. Not a single word was uttered about my acceptance. The silence was deafening. I threw myself into my studies at the university, finding solace and validation in the demanding coursework. Meanwhile, Brittany pursued a different path. She enrolled in the local community college, her primary interest lying not in academics, but in her burgeoning social life. It wasn't long before she started dating Kevin, her high school sweetheart. In stark contrast, I discovered my niche, my passion in the fascinating world of financial analytics. For the first time in my life, my hard work and intelligence were not only noticed, but genuinely appreciated. I made close friends, kindred spirits who shared my love for numbers and complex problem solving. It felt like I had finally found a place where I truly belonged. Back home, Brittany's life unfolded exactly as my parents had always envisioned. She married Kevin in a lavish, expensive wedding, a spectacle my parents proudly funded. I stood by as a bridesmaid, a familiar ache of being an outsider resonating within me, even amidst the forced smiles and celebratory atmosphere. A year later, Brittany announced her pregnancy. When she gave birth, it was as if the entire universe revolved around that hospital room. "We're grandparents," my dad kept exclaiming, tears welling up in his eyes. "Can you believe it, Jessica? Aren't you excited to be an aunt?" I was happy for Brittany, truly. But a familiar shadow of being overlooked crept over me. I had just landed a coveted job at one of the top financial firms in the city, a significant milestone in my career. Yet compared to Brittany, becoming a mother, my professional achievement seemed to pale in significance, barely warranting a mention. 3 years later, when Brittany had her second child, the pattern repeated itself. Brittany was the quintessential perfect daughter, complete with the perfect family, and me. I was simply Jessica, the one who worked too much, didn't date enough, and most importantly, in my parents' eyes, didn't provide them with grandchildren to dote on. By the time I turned 31, I had climbed the corporate ladder to the position of senior financial analyst. I was respected by my colleagues, valued by my clients, and for the first time, I felt a genuine sense of pride in my accomplishments. To celebrate this significant milestone, I decided to buy a house. It was a charming one-bedroom home in a desirable neighborhood. It wasn't a sprawling mansion, but it was mine. Bought with my own hard-earned money. The day I held the keys in my hand, a profound sense of ownership and pride washed over me, a feeling I had never experienced before. Eager to share my achievement, I invited my family over to see my new home, foolishly hoping that finally they would truly see what I had accomplished, that they would be genuinely proud of me. When they arrived, Brittany had her 2 young children in tow, their boundless energy immediately becoming the center of my parents' attention. While I gave them a tour of my new home, my mom's primary observation was, "It's such a big house for just one person, isn't it?" My heart sang. "It's an investment," I explained, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "And now I have space for a home office." "Well, I suppose that makes sense," my dad said, but his tone lacked any real conviction. As they were leaving, I overheard my mom whisper to Brittany, "It's a shame Jessica doesn't have a family to fill that big house, but I suppose her career is important to her." The subtle jab stung. A few months later, after I had settled into the comforting rhythm of life in my own home, I received an unexpected invitation to a family dinner. I was surprised. My family often seemed to forget to include me in their gatherings, perhaps assuming I was too different or simply uninteresting. But I accepted a fragile seed of hope blossoming within me, that perhaps finally things were beginning to change. When I arrived, my dad gave me an awkward pat on the shoulder. "Jessica, good of you to come. Have a seat. We have something important to discuss." A knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. Important discussions. In my family, usually heralded something wonderful for Brittany and something disheartening for me still. I sat down, forcing a polite smile. Throughout dinner, the conversation revolved entirely around Brittany's children and Kevin's mundane job. I attempted to mention a significant project I had just completed at work. A real career triumph. But before I could even finish my sentence, Timothy, Brittany's youngest, started wailing for more dessert, effectively silencing me. My words hung in the air unnoticed. After dinner, we migrated to the living room. My mother cleared her throat, her tone taking on a falsely gentle quality. "Jessica, dear, we've been thinking." I tensed, a cold premonition washing over me. "You're single and don't have children," she continued as if stating a grave and unfortunate flaw, "and you have that big house all to yourself." "Yes," I replied slowly, a growing unease settling in my chest. I didn't like where this was going. My dad leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Well, we think it would be best if you gave your house to Brittany and her family." I blinked, sure I had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "Give them the keys and move out," my mom stated matter-of-factly, as if she were asking me to pass the mashed potatoes. "They need the space more than you do." I looked around the room, searching for a hint of amusement, a sign that this was some bizarre, insensitive joke, but their faces remained utterly serious. Brittany sat there, a smug little smile playing on her lips, while Kevin patted her shoulder in a gesture of apparent comfort. "You're joking, right?" I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. "Now, Jessica," my mom said, adopting that condescending tone she always used when she perceived me as being difficult. "Don't be selfish. Brittany needs the space more than you do. You're just one person after all. It's your duty as her sister," my dad added, as if that single sentence was the ultimate irrefutable justification. Family helps family. I felt like I had stumbled into some kind of twisted, surreal nightmare. "But it's my house," I protested, my voice gaining a little strength. "I bought it with my own money. I worked incredibly hard for it." "Oh, come on, Jessica," Brittany chimed in, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You know how hard it is raising 2 kids in our tiny apartment? You'd be doing us such a big favor." I stood up, my hands trembling with a mixture of disbelief and rising fury. "No," I said, my voice growing stronger, resonating with a newfound resolve. "Absolutely not. I am not giving you my house." The room erupted. My parents launched into a litany of all the supposed sacrifices they had made for me over the years, conveniently overlooking the decades of blatant favoritism. Brittany launched into a dramatic monologue about the immense hardships of raising children in a cramped living space, while Kevin simply sat there nodding in agreement, as if this entire outrageous proposition was perfectly reasonable. As I turned and walked out, the sound of my mother's voice followed me, laced with a chilling blend of entitlement and manipulation. "Think about it, Jessica. Don't be selfish." In the immediate aftermath of that appalling dinner, my life descended into a chaotic mess. My parents, with their uncanny ability to twist reality, had clearly painted me as the villain, the heartless older sister who refused to help her struggling family. Suddenly, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, people who barely knew me, began bombarding me with calls and messages, each one echoing the same judgmental sentiment. They acted as if they possessed some divine insight into my life, into what was best for me. One particularly galling afternoon, my phone rang. It was my great-aunt Kimberly, a woman I hadn't seen since I was a gawky teenager. "Jessica," she practically shrieked into the phone, her voice dripping with theatrical outrage. "I heard about your situation. How could you be so utterly heartless? You're nothing but an old maid hoarding your money for no good reason." The sheer audacity of her judgment left me speechless. The very next day, a text message popped up on my phone from my cousin Gary, a man I could barely pick out of a lineup. "Hey, Jessica," it read, dripping with condescending pity. "Heard you're being difficult. Why don't you just move to some remote island and live as a hermit? You're practically an outcast and a loner anyway." The casual cruelty of his words felt like a punch to the gut. 3 agonizing weeks crawled by after that horrific family dinner. I was home, miserable with a nasty cold, wrapped in a thick blanket, and sipping lukewarm tea. Suddenly, a strange, unsettling noise emanated from my front door. It sounded like someone was fiddling with the lock. My heart leaped into my throat, a cold wave of fear washing over me. Was someone trying to break in? I carefully set down my mug. My hands trembling, I crept toward the door, my legs feeling weak and unsteady beneath me. Peeking through the peephole, I nearly gasped aloud. There on my front porch stood my sister, my parents, and Kevin. And to my absolute horror, Brittany was kneeling by the lock, a bobby pin glinting in her hand as she expertly tried to pick it open. My parents stood nearby, their faces tense, keeping watch like accomplices in a petty crime. Kevin lingered a little farther back, his expression a mask of nervous anticipation. Without thinking, fueled by a surge of pure, unadulterated fury, I yanked the door open. They all recoiled, jumping back in stunned surprise, caught red-handed in their audacious act. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice hoarse from my cold, but laced with righteous anger. For a frozen moment, they simply stared at me, their faces a mixture of shock and guilt. Then, to my utter disbelief, my mother spoke, her tone attempting to feign innocence. "Oh, Jessica, we thought you'd be at work. We were just gonna move in. Move in," I repeated the word, feeling foreign and absurd on my tongue. You mean break in and live in my house without my permission? Jessica, sweetheart, my father interjected, trying to inject a tone of reasonableness into the utterly unreasonable situation. We knew you wouldn't actually call the police on us. We're family, after all. I looked past their pathetic attempts at justification and saw a car parked in my driveway, its trunk overflowing with boxes and suitcases. They had actually planned to move in to usurp my home behind my back. The sheer audacity of it stole my breath. Get off my property, I said, my voice low and firm, each word laced with steel. Now or we'll call the police. I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the emergency dial, holding it up so they could clearly see my intent. Last chance, leave. They stared at me, disbelief etched on their faces. Then slowly, reluctantly, they turned and retreated. Just drive away. My entire body shaking with a potent cocktail of anger, disbelief, and a strange sense of liberation. Once they were gone, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and slid down onto the floor, my back pressed against the solid wood, the reality of their betrayal sinking in. Something inside me had finally snapped. I knew with absolute certainty that things could never go back to the way they were. I had to take decisive action to protect myself and my hard-won peace. The very next day, I contacted a reputable security company and had a comprehensive surveillance system installed around my house. These weren't just basic cameras. They were equipped with high-quality video and, crucially, audio recording capabilities. I wanted irrefutable proof of any further intrusions or malicious behavior, but technology alone didn't feel like enough. I had always secretly longed for a dog, a loyal companion. And now I had the perfect, undeniable reason to finally get one. I visited the local animal shelter, my heart set on finding a furry guardian who could also fill the void of loneliness I had carried for so long. That's where I met Buddy. He was a magnificent mixed-breed dog, large and sturdy, with intelligent, soulful eyes and a cautious, observant nature. The shelter workers shared a heartbreaking story. His previous owners had abandoned him, deeming him too protective, but I saw past their label. I saw the loyal, loving dog, yearning for connection beneath his slightly wary exterior. Buddy and I bonded instantly. At home, he was the sweetest, most affectionate companion imaginable, always by my side, offering silent comfort and unwavering loyalty. But the moment a stranger approached the house, a transformation occurred. He became a fierce, vigilant guardian. His deep, resonant bark, a clear warning to anyone contemplating trespassing. I set up a comfortable kennel for him in the backyard, complete with a cozy doghouse and an abundance of squeaky toys. He seemed to adore his new domain, often basking in the sun, a watchful sentinel when he wasn't playfully nudging my hand for attention. For 3 blissful months, life settled into a peaceful rhythm. Then a sudden work emergency called me out of town for the weekend. I was reluctant to leave Buddy, but my kind neighbor, Mrs. Thomas, a sweet elderly woman who adored him, assured me she would take excellent care of him. She often brought him treats and took him for leisurely walks when I worked late. Feeling somewhat reassured, I left for my trip. But on the second night, my phone rang, shattering the fragile peace. It was Mrs. Thomas, and her voice trembled with panic. "Jessica, dear, there's been an incident," she stammered, her voice shaking. "Buddy, he bit a stranger. He chased them right out of the yard and down the street. The police are here now." My blood ran cold. I booked the first flight home, my mind racing, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. When I finally arrived, the scene that unfolded before me was ripped straight from my worst nightmares. My parents' car was parked conspicuously in front of my house. Brittany was there, her face a mask of indignant fury, while Kevin stood beside her, clutching his leg and looking both angry and smug. And to my utter horror, 4 uniformed police officers stood in my driveway. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's going on here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. One of the officers stepped forward, his expression serious. "Ma'am, we received a complaint about your dog attacking someone. Can you tell us what happened?" Before I could utter a single word, Brittany interjected, her voice shrill with outrage. "Her monster of a dog attacked my husband," she shrieked, pointing a dramatic finger at Kevin's bandaged leg. "He jumped right over the fence and bit him. He could have been killed." Suddenly, a chilling clarity washed over me. The stranger Buddy had bitten was Kevin. This wasn't an accident, this was deliberate. "That's not true," I stated firmly, my voice gaining strength. "My dog was protecting my property from intruders. If your husband got bitten, it's because he was trying to break into my house." Brittany's face contorted with rage, turning a furious shade of red. "Liar! That beast needs to be put down before it hurts someone else." My parents, who had been oddly silent until now, finally spoke, their eyes gleaming with a disturbing mix of anger and vindication. "We'll be pressing charges," my father declared, his voice cold and hard. "And of course you'll have to pay for Kevin's medical bills." The officer looked from my distraught face to my accusers, clearly sensing the toxic family dynamics at play. "Ma'am," he said, his tone professional but concerned, "because of the complaint, we have to take your dog to the kennel for evaluation. If he's deemed aggressive, he may have to be put down." My heart plummeted. A wave of despair washed over me as I watched Animal Control load Buddy into their van. He looked at me with confused, sad eyes, and tears welled up in mine. As the officers in the Animal Control vehicle drove away, my mother stepped closer, a smug, almost triumphant look on her face. In a low, insidious whisper, she said, "You know, Jessica, all of this could have been avoided if you had just given us the house." She offered a sickeningly sweet smile. "It's not too late," she continued, her voice laced with manipulative sweetness. "Give us the house, and we'll drop the charges. Otherwise, well, you know what happens to aggressive dogs." I stood frozen, the weight of their cruelty crushing me, watching as my family drove away, their faces smug and satisfied. Then, like a jolt of electricity, a sudden realization sparked in my mind. The security cameras. I raced into the house, my heart pounding with a desperate surge of hope. My hands shook as I turned on my laptop and frantically pulled up the security footage from the previous night. Holding my breath, I prayed that the cameras had captured what I desperately needed. The video was crystal clear. I watched my stomach churning with a mixture of dread and vindication as Brittany and Kevin crept up to my front door, their furtive glances revealing their deceitful intentions. Then Buddy appeared on the screen, his fur bristling protectively as he let out a low growl. And then I heard it, Brittany's voice clear as day, her words dripping with calculated malice. "Kevin kicked the dog. When it bites you, we can accuse Jessica and demand compensation. Or better yet, we can get the whole house in exchange for the dog's life." My blood ran cold, and the screen, Kevin cruelly kicked Buddy, catching him completely off guard. Instinctively, Buddy reacted in self-defense, nipping at Kevin's leg. Brittany let out a loud theatrical scream, and Buddy, clearly confused and distressed, immediately let go. The two of them then scurried away, leaving my loyal companion standing there, bewildered and upset. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The pieces of their cruel scheme had clicked into place. This wasn't an accident. It was a calculated, malicious attempt to manipulate me, to steal my home, and potentially harm my beloved dog. The rage that simmered within me threatened to boil over. The next morning, I called my parents, my voice carefully controlled, masking the fury that still raged beneath the surface. "I think we need to have a serious conversation," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Can you all come over to my house?" There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. Then my mother's voice, dripping with false concern, came through. "Of course, dear, we'll be right over." An hour later, they arrived. My parents, Brittany and Kevin, who now sported a ridiculously large bandage wrapped around his leg, a pathetic prop in their ongoing charade. As they walked into my living room, I could see the smug looks on their faces. They genuinely believed they had won. Brittany immediately began surveying the room, making herself at home, with an unsettling sense of entitlement. "We'll definitely need to get rid of this ugly lamp," she declared, wrinkling her nose in distaste. "And this couch, not good enough. We'll replace it with something more family-friendly." I bit my tongue, letting her continue her presumptuous assessment, the injustice of it fueling my resolve. Finally, I cleared my throat, the sound sharp and decisive in the suddenly quiet room. "Before we discuss anything, I said, my voice calm, despite the storm raging inside me. I think you should all watch something first. I gestured towards the large television mounted on the wall. Please have a seat. They hesitated, a flicker of confusion crossing their faces, but they eventually settled down. Brittany perched on the armrest, looking utterly bored and annoyed, and then I pressed play. I watched, a grim satisfaction growing within me as my family's faces paled, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock, and finally to utter horror as they realized they had been caught on camera, their despicable scheme laid bare for all to see. Brittany was the first to break the stunned silence, her voice a shaky stammer. It was just a prank, she blurted out, her eyes wide with panic. We didn't mean any harm. Kevin quickly nodded, wincing dramatically as the movement aggravated his injured leg. Yeah, just a joke that went too far, he added lamely. No need to make a big deal out of it, right? But my parents understood the gravity of the situation. The color had drained from my father's face. He leaned forward, his expression a mask of desperation. Jessica, sweetheart, he said carefully, his voice trembling slightly. Let's not do anything drastic. There's no need to make this public. We can settle this as a family. I couldn't help but smile, a cold, humorless smile that made them all flinch. It's a little late for that, don't you think? I said, glancing pointedly at my watch. And speaking of late, I believe we have some guests arriving right on cue. Just then, a sharp knock echoed through the house. I walked to the door and opened it to reveal 4 uniformed police officers. The very officers I had called earlier that morning. Perfect timing, I said, stepping aside to let them in. Officers, I have evidence of an attempted break-in and blackmail. What followed was a blur of activity. I calmly explained everything that had transpired, presenting the damning security footage as irrefutable proof of their malicious intent. The officers watched it intently, their expressions hardening as the truth became clear. A moment later, Brittany and Kevin were being handcuffed, the officers reciting their rights in a monotone voice. My parents broke down in tears, their pleas desperate and filled with self-pity. Jessica, please. My mother sobbed, her face contorted with anguish. Don't do this. We're family. For a fleeting moment, a small pang of sadness resonated within me, a ghost of the familial love I had once desperately craved. But it was quickly drowned out by the overwhelming weight of years of emotional neglect and their recent blatant betrayal. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my home and hurt my dog, I said, my voice cold and resolute. I think it's time for you to leave, I said. With tears streaming down their faces, my parents followed as Brittany and Kevin were led to the police car, their smug expressions replaced with bewildered fear. A profound sense of closure, sharp and bittersweet, settled over me as I watched them drive away. That evening, feeling lighter than I had in years, a weight finally lifted from my shoulders, I went to the animal shelter to bring Buddy home. The moment he saw me, his tail wagged with such unrestrained joy that his whole body wiggled. He showered my face with excited, slobbery kisses, his warm presence a balm to my wounded spirit. Let's go home, Buddy, I whispered, hugging him tightly. My loyal protector finally back where he belonged. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. Brittany and Kevin were arrested and taken to trial. The security footage served as undeniable evidence of their attempted break-in and blackmail. They were found guilty, slapped with a hefty fine, money that was rightfully awarded to me, and sentenced to probation. I made the difficult but necessary decision to cut off all contact with my immediate family. The years of emotional manipulation and their recent egregious betrayal had irrevocably damaged our relationship. However, I felt that the rest of my extended family deserved to know the truth. I sent a detailed message to all our aunts, uncles, and cousins, explaining everything that had happened and including copies of the damning security footage as proof. The response was overwhelming. Aunts, uncles, and cousins, who had once echoed my parents' judgmental sentiments, now sent messages of heartfelt support and sincere apology. Many were shocked and appalled by the extent of my parents' Brittany's and Kevin's actions. Even the most forgiving relatives refused to include them in future family gatherings. They were now the outsiders, their manipulative behavior having finally caught up with them. Moving forward, my life only continued to improve. I thrived at my job, finding more satisfaction and fulfillment in my work than ever before. Buddy and I settled into a peaceful, joyful routine, enjoying long walks in the nearby park. The simple pleasure of his companionship, a constant source of comfort. It was on one of those sun-drenched walks that I met Brian, a kind-hearted software engineer with a playful golden retriever named Bella. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love of dogs and our surprisingly similar experiences with difficult families. We exchanged numbers, and soon casual walks turned into meaningful dates. Day by day, our relationship blossomed, built on mutual respect, genuine affection, and a shared understanding of navigating complex family dynamics. For the first time, I felt truly seen and appreciated for who I was, not for who my family wanted me to be. A valuable lesson, this story serves as a powerful reminder that your worth is not determined by the validation or approval of others, especially family. True self-worth comes from recognizing your own achievements, valuing your own efforts, and building a life based on your own terms. It's okay to create boundaries even with family when their behavior is consistently harmful or dismissive. Sometimes choosing yourself and your own well-being is the most courageous and ultimately the most rewarding path. What are your thoughts on Jessica's journey? Have you ever faced similar challenges? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring narratives.